what's up? Hello, my name is Emma, and today I'm going to be sharing my favorite books that I read in 2019. As I'm sure you can hear, I have a little bit of a cold today, but I have been really excited to film this video and talk about all of the books that I loved the most from last year. But this year's video feels a bit different for a couple of reasons. Number one, I have a much smaller list this year. Normally I'll do like top 18 books I read in 2018, but this year I really wanted to condense it down to the books that I felt were the most impactful. Secondly, I always rank the books in this video where I'll put like my lesser favorite of the years and rank it down to my top number one favorite. But this year, I'm kind of just like making a general list. The placement of when I mention them doesn't really matter other than my number one top spot, which is the last book I'll talk about. I've got 8 favorite books of last year. 3 of them are adult, so it's different, but we're embracing the change in 2020, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video. First up on my favorites of the year, we have Serpent Dove by Shelby Mahurin. This is a debut young adult fantasy novel that just came out this year and stole my heart from the very first page. This book takes place in a fantastical 16th century / 17th century France setting, and it follows a witch named Louise LeBlanc who is on the run. Though she's trying to fly under the radar, Lou gets tangled up with one of the most revered soldiers in the Archbishop's army, and in order to sort of save face in front of the public, Lou and Reed have to enter an arranged marriage together. But of course, as Reed is a witch hunter, he does not know that Louise is a witch. One of the things that strikes me most about Serpent and Dove is just the overall setting and world. It is very atmospheric. It has this whole like romantic aura because it's French. The magic system is also super complex and I feel very different from a lot of YA stories out there. It's pretty gruesome and dark, and it has a lot of like limitations and rules to it, so it was a lot of fun uncovering that throughout the story. I have a real strong attachment to this cast, and that is something that I feel is super difficult to achieve from like a world or an author that I'm not previously invested in. Lou has very quickly become one of my all-time favorite YA heroines. I just love how fierce and badass she is, but her vulnerable side peeks out. I think Reed complements her really well, and I love the side characters too. And I also love the plot of the story. There are so many twists and turns, incredible reveals that you will not expect. I really loved Serpent and Dove. In my opinion, it's one of the best YA fantasies to come out in the last couple of years, and if you haven't picked it up yet, I highly recommend. Next up on my list of favorite books of 2019, we have Let Me Hear a Rhyme by Tiffany D. Jackson. This is another young adult story that is set in 1990s Brooklyn. So this story follows 2 boys named Kadir and Jarrell after one of their other friends named Steph has recently been murdered. And so Steph was an extremely talented rapper, but he never shared his music with the world. So Kadir and Jarrell team up with Steph's younger sister named Jasmine, and they decide to create an anonymous persona to release his music out into the world and get him famous. But as all this hype takes off and Steph's message is being spread to the world and producers are contacting them, no one really knows that Steph is actually dead. Let Me Hear a Rhyme is one of those books that I absolutely knew that I would love. There wasn't a question about it, but it still managed to exceed my expectations and blow me away in a lot of aspects, and I find that really impressive. The setting of this book is just absolutely fabulous, with the 90s atmosphere combined with all of the hip-hop influence and like everything that was going on in the hip-hop industry at that time. It just really made the story felt super honest and real. This is a story where I wasn't necessarily as attached to the individual characters or the romance of the story, but it was really like the plot and the excitement that kept me reading. It was just so fun to see all of the different situations these 3 mere teenagers get themselves into and like how they're interacting with the music industry. There's just a lot of fun scenes. Like there's a big like rap battle that's supposed to happen, and I was smiling and laughing throughout the whole book. But despite it being fun and lighthearted in those aspects, it also deals with a lot of intense themes. There's a lot of also Black history influence and something that we learn about throughout the story. So much talk about gang violence and just general racial tensions in communities like this. It left a super lasting impression on me for all the right reasons. So if 90s and hip hop and music is all something you're interested in, I feel like Let Me Hear a Rhyme is going to be a great book for you. Next up on my list of favorite books I read in 2019 is People Kill People by Ellen Hopkins. So this story is half novel, half told in verse, and it is all centered around the discussion of gun violence in America. The story follows 6 teens who all come from the same community but have drastically different opinions on guns. And so at the start of the story, they all start out together, and by the end, one person shoots a gun and one person will die. People Kill People is one I totally picked up on a whim, and I was actually a little bit nervous going into it because poetry is like traditionally not my thing at all, and I don't have a lot of experience with it. So I was really nervous reading something out of my comfort zone, but it completely enthralled me all the way through. I really admire the fact that this book took risks. Like, there's a lot of things that Ellen Hopkins does and says in this book that I feel like a lot of authors wouldn't do for fear of being controversial. Like, the example I always give is that one of our main characters, or actually 2 of them, are like white supremacists, like hard white supremacists. And there are other characters that have been disabled and have lost loved ones as a result of gun violence. So it really covers so many different areas on the spectrum, and that's why I think it is a well-rounded discussion. It's not the individual characters of this story that stand out to me, it's what they represent, it's the voices that they're giving to different people. And I just felt like the book did a great job of exploring all of that nuanced discussion around this topic. And with the chapters in verse, I surprisingly really loved them. A lot of it is actually told from the perspective of like the evil within all of us, so it's not necessarily one character, and I just always think it's really special when books have like a separate narrator like that. So it was just a really great read, totally touched my heart and made me feel a lot of things. It was profound, it was poignant, and I highly recommend you pick it up. Next on my list of favorite books I read in 2019 is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. This is the first installment in a new adult fantasy series, and it follows a girl named Alex Stern who has the ability to see ghosts. Alex comes from a difficult home life, but she has always had the ability to see and communicate with ghosts. So she is recruited by Yale University in order to sort of regulate the activities of their secret societies that do all of these different magic rituals. And at the time that she begins working there and whatnot, a girl is found dead close to campus. The book is sort of told in dual timelines, with Alex's first year at Yale when she is just getting introduced to all of the rules and the goings-on of Lethe House, and then also in the present where this girl has been murdered, but also Alex's mentor has gone missing. So there's a lot to it, but I absolutely loved this book. Again, knew I would, but it also was so much better than I imagined. Ninth House was not the easiest read for me. I listened to the audiobook and I found that in order to like keep my head around all of the information, I was rewinding a lot, but it worked out for me, so I'm totally okay with it because it helped me enjoy and appreciate the story more. This book does get pretty dark at times. There's obviously a lot of themes of murder and drug abuse and sexual assault and whatnot, so it's definitely not one for the faint of heart, but I typically love books like this that expose the darkest and evilest parts of humanity, so I really enjoyed seeing all of those things. Well, not that I enjoyed it. Although technically I did like reading about it, so I guess it means that I enjoyed it. How do you talk about enjoying disturbing content? I don't know. So yeah, Ninth House was totally worth all the hype for me. I loved the magic, the setting, the history, the mystery. It just really fulfilled me as a reader, and I cannot wait to read the second book. Next up on my list of favorite books I read in 2019 is King of Fools by Amanda Foody, which is the sequel to Ace of Shades. Ace of Shades is a young adult fantasy series that follows a girl named N whose butler has gone missing. So she has to leave her cozy life at finishing school in order to travel to the scandalous city of Sin in order to find her mother. N's only lead is the youngest crime lord in the city named Levi, who is currently involved in a scam that is going really badly. What Levi really needs is money, so N agrees to pay him, and they traverse New Reigns looking for N's mother and getting into all of these different dangerous dangerous situations along the way. Ace of Shades is a book I liked from the start, but I honestly think I even like King of Fools more. This is another magic system that I really, really adore. It is very complex and has so many different layers to it. The powers and how they work is really creative to me, and it's also tied into the political arc of the story, the class of different people with powers, and the different ruling families of New Reigns. It's all very fascinating to me, and I love uncovering more. This is another series with a fabulous set of lovable characters, and especially because it's a sequel, there's a lot of growth and so much change that the characters go through from book one that I really appreciated. And the real reason that I feel that King of Fools makes it to my top favorites of the year list is just because the ending blew my mind. It was like every time I thought we had hit the climax and like the story was gonna end, we still had like 50 pages left. So much magic and battles and plot twists, and I was just like screaming at my book by the end, and those are some of my favorite experiences to have as a reader. So just the wild note that this book completely rode out to the end is definitely why it's made it to my favorite of the year list, and I cannot wait to read book 3, the finale, Queen of Volts, when it comes out this year. I'm like a big Amanda Foodie stan because I love everything she writes, but Ace of Shades, in my opinion, is really, really great, and I think it deserves way more hype than it gets. Next up on my favorites of the year list is one I did not really expect to read, much less become like an absolute favorite of mine, and that is My Dark Vanessa by Cait Elizabeth Russell. Now, this book actually isn't out yet at the time of me reading it. It comes out this January of 2020, but I got an advanced reader copy of it and also picked this one up totally on a whim, no expectations, had never heard anything about it. But once I started, I could not stop. So this book is all about a girl named Vanessa.
My middle name is Vanessa.
Who goes to an elite boarding school when she's 15 and begins an affair with one of her teachers. And so Vanessa has always believed that this relationship is consensual. She believes that she is in love with this teacher and that it has been the greatest love story of her life. But when we fast forward about 17 years, some new allegations about this teacher abusing his students has come out, and so Vanessa is forced to really confront everything about her past and everything she has known about this relationship that has completely shaped her life. I love this book. Like, I truly and wholeheartedly love this novel. And what I love about this book is that it's an outstanding exploration of trauma from child sexual abuse and grooming, but also the way that power imbalances are imbued in our society and the people who are complicit that gatekeep them. This book holds so much power. It is raw and disturbing, but it's honest, and that's the most important thing about it. Everything about this book, from the writing and the characterization, is just flawless. Like, I'm so thoroughly impressed that it is a debut. I heard that the author has been writing this book since she was like 16 and like consistently putting work into it since then over the years, and you can just really tell that this is a carefully crafted novel. It is not an easy book to read by any means, but it really made me think deeply about some dark topics that exist in our world, and I'm super grateful for the experience I had with it. So if you like a book that's going to make you think critically and challenge your views of our society, I highly recommend you pick up My Dark Vanessa. I think it is super important, and I would just love to hear more people's thoughts on it. And finally, we have made it to my favorite book of 2019. Now, I know I had like really hyped up this battle between 3 of my most anticipated books of the year: Daisy Jones and the Six, The Toll, and Supernova. Unfortunately, I have not even finished reading The Toll. I didn't read it in 2019, so I can't count it towards this list, so it is unfortunately disqualified. Now, I did read Supernova, but unfortunately I did not love Supernova nearly as much as I expected to, and it was a little bit of a letdown for me, so it did not make my top of 2019 list. So when you look at it that way, this book kind of looks like it won by default, but it absolutely didn't, because we've known this was going to be my top #1 favorite book of the year for many months now. but it is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Are you sick of me talking about this book yet? Too bad, because it's nowhere near over. Daisy Jones and the Six was definitely one of the most popular books of 2019. It is a historical fiction novel set in the 1960s and 70s, following a songwriter named Daisy Jones and a band called The Six that are put together by a record producer and become like the biggest band in the world. And so this story is the interview transcripts of different band members sort of telling their truth and explaining what it was like for them to play together for the first time, what it was like at the top of their game, and finding out for the first time why they broke up. So yeah, Daisy Jones and the Six is my favorite book of this year. I actually recently got a tattoo. It's a quote from Daisy that says, "I am the somebody," and I am absolutely obsessed with it. I read Daisy Jones and the Six 3 times in the year of 2019, and it was honestly like the best decision I made. One of the most like bizarre but awesome things about this story is how real this band feels. Like when you're in this story, they feel like honest, real people, and you start to question like, was Daisy Jones and the Six a real band? The characters are all flawed in their own ways, but very grounded in reality, and they are also so different but complement each other incredibly well. This book covers a lot of things, obviously, like music and drugs, as it's set in the 70s and follows a band, but so much about life and love and family and being the best person to yourself is captured in this book, and I just think that each character's storyline really tells something special. It's one of those books I could really talk forever about, but if you asked me to accurately describe the ways in which it has changed my life, I really couldn't. I just know that it has. This book is so important to me. I'll carry it with me for the rest of my life, and I'm just super, super grateful it exists. Alrighty, well, that concludes my list of my favorite books of 2019. I really hope you guys enjoyed. I feel like it's like not what any of us were expecting, but nonetheless, like these are some of the most amazing books I read in 2019, and I'm really pleased with them. In the comments below, I would love to know either your thoughts on any of the books that are my favorites or what some of your favorites of 2019 were. But that is it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you soon for a new one. Bye!